The last thing my father said before slamming the front door was, "Leave your house keys on the kitchen counter. You're not welcome here anymore." I quietly placed the keys on the counter, walked away with tears in my eyes, and less than an hour later, the mortgage company called me with news that turned my parents' victory into their worst nightmare. My name is Emma. I'm 35 years old, and if you had asked me growing up who I trusted most in the world, I would have answered without hesitation, my parents. I never imagined they would one day throw me out of my own house. People always assumed my family was perfect. My father, Richard, was respected in town. My mother, Susan, volunteered at church every weekend. They smiled in every family photo. They gave advice to everyone. Behind closed doors, things were very different. I was their oldest child. Then came my younger brother, Kyle. From the day he was born, it became obvious who mattered more. If Kyle broke something, it was an accident. If I made the smallest mistake, it became a lecture. I learned very young that earning their approval was impossible. Still, I spent years trying. After college, I became an accountant and worked endless overtime until I finally saved enough for a down payment on a beautiful 3-bedroom house. Buying that house was the proudest day of my life. My parents acted supportive. Dad even hugged me. "I'm proud of you." Those words meant everything. Looking back, I think they were the biggest lie he ever told. About a year after buying the house, my parents ran into financial trouble. Dad's construction business struggled. They said they needed somewhere to stay just for a few months. I didn't hesitate. "Move in. They're your parents," my fiancé said. I'd do the same. The first month went smoothly. Then little things started changing. Mom rearranged my furniture without asking. Dad replaced the locks on the garage. Kyle suddenly had his own bedroom despite never paying $1 toward bills. Whenever I complained, Mom smiled. "We're family." I ignored my instincts. That was my biggest mistake. Within 6 months, it no longer felt like my house. It felt like I was renting a room inside someone else's home. One evening I came home from work and discovered my bedroom had been moved. My clothes. My furniture. Everything was now in the smallest guest room. "What happened?" Mom answered casually. "Kyle needs more space." I stared at her. "This is my bedroom." Dad didn't even look up from the television. "Don't start drama." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The following weeks became unbearable. They invited relatives over without asking. They criticized everything I did. Eventually Mom started introducing the house as our family home. Not once did she mention it belonged to me. Then came the day everything exploded. Kyle wanted to renovate the basement into his own apartment. I refused. "It's not happening." Dad slammed his coffee mug on the table. "You've become selfish. I paid for this house. We're your family." "I know. So act like it." Instead, Dad stood up, walked to the kitchen drawer, grabbed my spare house keys, and held out his hand. "Leave yours too." I laughed in disbelief. "What? If you can't respect this family, you're not welcome." Mom nodded. "Leave your keys." I looked around the room. Nobody defended me. Not even Kyle. Slowly, I placed my keys on the counter. I grabbed one suitcase. As I reached the door, Dad shouted, "Don't come back." I cried the entire drive to my best friend's apartment. I kept wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. Then my phone rang. The caller ID showed my mortgage company. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered. "Hello?" The representative sounded confused. "Ms. Carter?" "Yes. We received a request this morning to transfer responsibility for your mortgage." I froze. "What? The paperwork appears unusual. I never requested that. We suspected as much." My heart started pounding. Who submitted it? The woman hesitated. I'm afraid I can't disclose everything over the phone. But you should visit our office immediately. I barely slept that night. The next morning, the mortgage specialist placed several documents in front of me. The signatures looked like mine. But they weren't. Someone had forged every page. Then he quietly asked, "Does anyone else have access to your home?" My stomach dropped. My parents. That was the moment everything changed. The mortgage company immediately launched an internal fraud investigation. Because the documents had triggered security alerts, they had never been approved. If they hadn't noticed, ownership could have become a legal nightmare. I felt sick. The people I had trusted most had tried to take my house. Then came the first twist. Security cameras inside the mortgage office showed exactly who submitted the paperwork. My father. Standing beside Kyle. Neither of them knew they were being recorded. Even worse. Dad was heard telling an employee. My daughter already agreed. That single sentence became evidence. I confronted Mom by phone. Did you know? She didn't even deny it. You owe this family. No. I gave everything to this family. You'll understand someday. I hung up. There was nothing left to say. A few days later, my attorney uncovered another shocking discovery. While reviewing county records, he found my parents had already listed my house as collateral when applying for a business loan. The application had been denied only because the ownership records didn't match. I couldn't believe it. They weren't trying to live with me. They were trying to own everything I had worked for. Then came the second twist. Kyle secretly contacted me. I need to tell you something. We met at a coffee shop. He looked terrified. I didn't know Dad forged your signature. You were with him. I thought you agreed. Then he handed me a flash drive. Take this. What is it? I recorded something. Inside were audio recordings from weeks earlier. Dad saying, "Once Emma signs everything over, we'll tell her she can stay somewhere else." Mom laughed. She won't fight us. She always gives in. I sat there completely speechless. Years of manipulation suddenly made sense. They had counted on me staying quiet. This time, they were wrong. The case moved quickly. Forgery. Attempted mortgage fraud. False financial statements. Everything pointed back to my parents. Relatives who had once called me selfish suddenly stopped answering my parents' phone calls. Church friends learned the truth. Dad's reputation collapsed almost overnight. The courtroom was silent when the recordings played. My father never looked at me. Mom cried. Not because she felt guilty. Because she had finally been caught. The judge didn't hold back. The evidence shows a deliberate attempt to obtain property through fraud. Every word felt like justice. The criminal charges moved forward. The civil court granted a permanent order confirming I was the sole owner. Then something happened I never expected. The bank demanded immediate repayment of loans my parents had obtained using false information. Without enough money to repay them, they were forced to sell the home they actually owned. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. They tried to steal my house. And ended up losing theirs. Several months later, Dad called. For the first time in my life, his voice sounded small. "I'm sorry." I stayed silent. Then he whispered. "I thought family meant sharing everything." I finally answered. "No. Family means not stealing from the person who opened their door to you." He started crying. I didn't. Some wounds are simply too deep. Today I'm still living in the same house. The locks have all been changed. The security system has been upgraded. The kitchen counter where I left my keys that day still reminds me of the biggest lesson of my life. I thought leaving those keys meant losing my home. In reality, It was the moment I stopped letting toxic people control it. The mortgage company didn't just save my house. It exposed the truth my parents had spent years hiding. They told me to leave my own home. But in the end, they were the ones who lost everything.